Welcome to the Her Podcast with Kristin Sampson, offering a message of hope, encouragement, and reflection with special guests.
Today I have two special guests with me, all the way up in Dickson, Tennessee, and Libby and Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yes. Yes, thanks for joining us. I know y'all are really busy people, and I really appreciate y'all taking your time out of your busy day to let us get to know y'all a little bit more behind the scenes of preacher wives and their husbands as preachers, and kind of let us get to know you more personally behind the scenes.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so how long have y'all been in Dickson now?
So I moved 6 months before her because she had to see her contract out at Abilene Christian. I moved in November of 2022. So November 1, 2022. So what, 2.5 years?
And I've been here almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Are y'all loving it?
Oh, we do.
Yes.
We really miss where we came from, but we love where we're at.
Yeah, that's a big difference coming from Texas to Tennessee. So, okay. So how did you guys meet, and how did your faith impact y'all's relationship?
So we're both from we have the same hometown in Northeast Arkansas. So we're both from Paragould. We knew each other for several years before we started dating. He's 3 years older than I am, and he was friends with my brothers, worked with my brothers. And so I knew of him. But we didn't start dating until we were both in college. And I started working at the same grocery store where my brothers worked. And he asked me out one night at the time clock, and I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't. So we started dating. What year was that? 94, 95. And been together ever since.
Yeah, I was the boss. I was her boss at the grocery store. So I was the assistant manager, and her brothers worked there as well. And she started working there. I was a senior in college. She was a sophomore. And so I used my authority and made her go out with me is what it was.
Forced it. So I'm assuming the brothers approved.
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, they're good dudes.
You're still here, so I think so.
Yes.
Okay, so moving from Texas to Tennessee, what has been y'all's biggest adjustment?
I would say probably just leaving our son behind in Texas. So he's 12 hours away now. That's kind of been difficult because we don't get to see him very often. But as far as climate and just, scenery, this is very similar to what we grew up with, much more than West Texas. So it really almost kind of felt like home coming back here. We missed, some places to eat, a lot of our friends there, obviously being there for 14 years, we had a lot of friends. But I think the hardest thing is just being that far away from our son.
Yeah, that helps. So,
the one son?
One son and then we have two daughters.
Yeah, this got us closer to our oldest daughter, who now has a child. And so that's our first and only grandchild. And so this got us closer to home. We grew up about 3 hours from here, across the river. And then, our daughter married a young man from Raymer, Tennessee, and they live in Corinth, right across the line in Corinth, Mississippi. So we can get to them in 2 to 2.5 hours. And so that's been really a blessing. But my biggest adjustment has been how slow people drive here. In Texas, the minimum speed limit is like 75, and people here, the speed limits in some towns are like 25, and it's just.
And people will still drive 5 miles below that speed limit.
Yeah, so
they're in no hurry.
Yeah, and that's taught me patience. So.
And lots of hills.
I bet.
I'm a runner, and so in Abilene, it was just flat, and here you can't go anywhere without running up and down hills.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely built up your endurance for sure. Oh, wow. Okay. So, Chris, what led you to consider ministry, and how did you know it was the right path for you?
Well, I don't know that anything led me there. I was a coach and I became a Christian while I was coaching. We attended a little bitty church in Charlotte, Arkansas, probably about 50 people. My superintendent, where I worked, was also an elder there, and he was instrumental, as well as the preacher, two preachers at this little bitty church. They swapped Sundays, and one of them was an older man in about his mid to late 70s, and then the other one was a younger guy that both helped me to understand discipleship, what it means to be a Christian, and all that. And so I was baptized in 1997, and it fell in my lap, really. There was an opportunity at a church in Batesville, which was the next biggest town to us. And a friend of mine that I taught with, her husband was deacon over the youth group there. And, he asked me one Sunday, we were up there visiting, and he just said, you know of anybody that would want to be a youth minister? And I just kind of thought about it. In a couple of days, I called him and I said, what about me? And he loved the idea, having a coach as a youth minister. But I'd been a Christian at that point, a year and a half, 2 years. I knew nothing. And so it was a pretty long process, interviews and things, I'm sure, because they didn't know that they wanted to take a chance with me.
Right.
They did, under the conditions that I would go back to Harding, which was 45 minutes away. They would pay my gas, they would buy my books, and pay for 2 classes a semester. And I did that. I did that for 4 years. And during that time, got to preach a little bit too. And that's when I realized, in fact, the preacher there that I worked with, Steve Norris, said, hey, Chris, youth ministry is fine and good, but you need to preach. And so at that point, kind of started shifting gears a little bit, but it just fell in my lap. I don't really have a good story about, hey, I prayed about it and God opened this door, and, it's just kind of, I never thought I would be in this position.
And I never did either. That just when we got married, thought I was marrying a coach. Had no idea that would ever, he would ever be led into ministry.
So what was your first impression of that, Libby, of being a minister's wife?
Well, of my first impression of when he was considering the youth minister's job was, well, I don't know if he can do that. Not because I didn't have faith in him, but I just knew he didn't have a background in the church. And I just really was kind of concerned, is he leaving, a secure job that he's good at for something that, he may or may not succeed at. And so my first, thought was just, I was kind of worried.
I believe so.
But he very, very quickly I knew he was good with kids. I knew he was, great at building relationships. And I knew that part would be good. I just didn't know if, his knowledge of the Bible. And I was just absolutely amazed how quickly he learned and was able to put that into practice. I grew up in the Church of Christ. I grew up going to a private Christian school where we had Bible every day. And so I was amazed at how quickly he learned all of that information, and just really, took it and grew, and was able to be a wonderful youth minister. And then eventually that led into ministry.
That's fantastic. You just never know, what the Lord has planned. And Caleb and I are similar to that as well. I met Caleb thinking he's going to be in business management. We're going to have, we had our dream house, we had our 2.3 kids, and everything was just in line with how I thought life was going to be. And same thing, the opportunity fell on his lap, and we've been doing it since. But my first thought was, I don't know if I want to do this. We were already highly involved, in the congregation, but didn't know. So, that's fantastic that y'all did this together and we're so open about it. Cause I know I was very hesitant at first too, cause it's different. It's like you said, he was a coach, and then go from a coach to to be in full-time ministry like that. And well, and look at you now. Look at y'all.
Trying not to mess it up.
No. What's the funniest or most unexpected situation that y'all have encountered in ministry?
Oh, go ahead. Funniest, most unexpected.
Funniest or unexpected.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind when I was a youth minister, the church bought one of those school buses and had it converted, to where it looks like a charter bus. And so I was at North Heights in Batesville, Arkansas, and the church there is on a big hill in town overlooking the fairgrounds. And thankfully, it was not the time of year when the fair was in town. But one night that bus rolled off that hill and all the way down into the pit below where the fairgrounds is. That was interesting.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and unexpected.
That's definitely very,
Yeah,
very
it
much
was.
so.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that people will come up and say to you that you're shocked by. What people will tell you. I think any minister would say that it's unbelievable what people will tell you, good and bad and indifferent. So there's a lot of stories like that I could write a book on what things people have said to me after a sermon or before I got up to preach or even during a sermon. Yeah.
Do y'all have a moment involving your kids, like a funny moment that you
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was while we were at North Heights in Batesville, and our middle daughter, Zoe, which she will hate for us to tell this story, but she's heard it several times. What was she, 2 maybe?
Maybe. Yeah.
Still in diapers or pull-ups. And she was going to go, she needed to go to the bathroom. It was right before church. And so I let her older sister take her out to the bathroom. And here, just a few minutes later, she comes running down the church aisle, absolutely naked from the waist down.
no.
So everybody got quite a little laugh from that, and she's never been able to do that down. Yeah.
I had an elder come up to me after that and say, "We need to have a talk with you and Libby about modesty." And
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's a hard one to forget for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris, what's one of the funniest excuses you've heard someone trying to skip church or a church event?
Everything from, I'm an animal lover, but I'm not one that I know this probably doesn't sit well with folks, but like we have a cat. If we lost our cat, they make a lot of cats. I'd find another cat. I'm just not one that humanizes animals or is attached to them. And I know that others are, and I have no problem with that. It's just, I'm just not that way. And like I said, I love animals, but not that way. So I've gotten a lot of excuses about, animals, pets, is why they couldn't make it. Like I said a while ago, the things that people will tell you about their body and sickness or what they've been dealing with. And you can fill in the gaps in whatever you're thinking. I've probably heard, people get very personal and very intimate with their health and their life. And in one sense, I'm so thankful that they feel close enough to me that they can share that. In another sense, I'm like, I don't want to know. I'm just glad that you're doing well now. But yeah, so I don't know about specifically, but several times, a pet or some sort of bodily malady of some kind that I didn't really want to know about.
I guess, yeah, that's what happens when you're the preacher. You get to hear all the things.
Yes.
All right, Libby, what are some unique challenges or blessings you have experienced as a preacher's wife?
The blessings are definitely the relationships that we've been able to build at every congregation that we've been at. Some of the challenges are that I attend a lot of funerals with him. I've been able to go to the bedside of a lot of people who are about to pass. And while those situations are challenging, they also can be some of the biggest blessings. We were able to at one point go and spend kind of the last few moments with a very dear friend and his family, and we got to share with their family in that, and sing and cry, and yeah, those have been some of the things that are the biggest challenges. Sometimes end up being the biggest blessings as well, to be with a family as they are kind of saying goodbye to their loved ones, but seeing the faith that they have, and the joy that they have knowing that they will see their loved one again.
Yeah, that's definitely lots of mixed emotions there for sure. Absolutely. So, in support of Chris, so while maintaining your own identity and spiritual walk, how are you able, like you do go with him to the bedsides and stuff? What are some other ways that you help support Chris and his ministry?
I think maybe just being encouraging to him, kind of being a sounding board. If he is wondering about a lesson, he might ask me for some feedback. And sometimes sometimes I will listen to his sermon beforehand, but a lot of times, I'm hearing it for the first time when everyone else is as well. But I try to be encouraging to him, and I mean, it's easy to do because I feel like he does a really good job both in the pulpit as well as with relationships with the people in the congregation. But just being a support for him, and listening ear for him when he needs that, when he's dealt with some stressful things. I think that's the way that I can support him best.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal to be able to do that, because not everybody, not even just as a preacher's wife, but just being a support for your husband is very hard. And be able to have that open heart like you do, Libby, and be able to listen and take that time to hear him and to help give him that confidence he needs, because behind every great man is an even better wife. And just saying. And so if Chris wouldn't be able to do all the things he does if it wasn't for you being so supportive, because he has to have that line too of family and church. And that is, we know too, like that's a very hard line to walk, because you're trying to please all these people and do the Lord's work, but also doing the Lord's work at home too. And so being that helpmeet, being that support for Chris is a big deal. It's not, I just listen. Like you do, you help in more ways than you realize, because he's able to do all these great things to help all these people. And in return, you're helping too in those ways, and going with him and being his support in those tough and difficult times, because not every preacher's wife does that, and not every wife does that. So that's big. That is so it makes a difference. It really does. I know we have visited other congregations and have been around where the wife just kind of does her own thing, and she's there if he needs them, but it's not, so it does. You can tell a difference, and it's not easy, but
Yeah.
you do a great job, Miss Libby.
Thank you.
Chris, what has been one of the most rewarding aspects of ministry for you?
Well, there's so many similarities between coaching and preaching or ministry. And as a coach, the most satisfying thing is when your team gets it and they buy in, and the culture you established is starting to grow, and the kids are believing in themselves. They believe in what you're teaching them. You see it working, and they're just clicking on all cylinders. That's one of the most rewarding things. I mean, aside from the easy answer is, to see people come to Christ, right? I mean, obviously that's the biggest thing, and that's the reason you do it. aside from that, I would say it's seeing the fruit of your labor, which is people growing and listening and saying, you know what, I hear you. I want to do better. Thank you for challenging me. Thank you for helping me and encouraging me and all those kind of things. That's when it really feels good. You feel a sense of satisfaction that, I'm doing what the Lord has tasked me to do, and people are accepting it and moving forward with it. That's a good feeling.
So, can y'all share a time when y'all have faced a significant trial that your church family has helped y'all through?
I think our son probably, um, Zane, many years ago. We were living in Cassville, Missouri. It was my first preaching job, and he was about 4, 5, and I guess he was about 4 because he wasn't in school that day, and got up that morning and couldn't walk, and had no idea what was going on. He could kind of stumble around, but he wasn't walking well at all. And I had a preacher's meeting in Joplin, Missouri. And so he went with me and just was getting worse, not better. And so we took him to the doctor, and the doctor scared us to death. I mean, honestly, probably didn't handle the situation real well, and just said, could be this rare disease and we need to go get him checked out at the hospital. And if he has this certain test that comes back, we'll call you and you come back up here because we know it's a problem. And so we went home and we prayed, and sure enough, the hospital called before we could load him up and get back up there. They called back and said, or maybe we even went up there. I think we even actually got up to the hospital, and it wasn't. There was a mistake, right? It wasn't what they thought it was, as far as that devastating, whatever they called it. I guess a buildup of lactic acid or something from riding his bike a lot. I still don't believe everything that we were told about it. It just was a weird scenario, but we were in those moments. I was a coach. My son, I wanted him to play ball and really wanted him to focus on that. If he did, it was fine, but he seemed to be liking ball and everything. And I thought, well, those days are over. It's time to pivot. It's time to, focus on how we can help our son, who's going to have limited mobility now, navigate life. And thankfully, we didn't have to go that route. But that was a scary, scary day.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, definitely when your kids are healthy one day and the next day, it's just all the unknowns. It's definitely makes you take a step back and reevaluate things and question some things for sure. Okay, Chris. So back to the young people. So many young people today might feel uncertain about pursuing ministry. So what would you say to someone who feels called to do this, but hesitant to take that step?
Well, I would say remember Moses and remember Gideon and remember other characters of the Bible that were hesitant to take on the task that God had called them to. God didn't let them off the hook simply because they had some ready-made excuses. He encouraged them and really, pushed them forward with the idea that I'm going to be there and I'm going to be with you all along the way. So you're going to be fine. We have a preschool and daycare at Walnut Street, and I've had an opportunity to go to their preschool graduation, their daycare graduation. And they ask them at the end, these little kids, what do they want to be when they grow up? And it's the, standard answers, policeman, fireman, that kind of thing. I've never heard a young man get up there and say he wanted to be a preacher. And I've always thought, why don't we encourage that, right? And I think it's because there's a bit of negativity surrounding it, because I know a lot of people tell me, I don't know how you do what you do. It's got to be so difficult and all that. And I mean, there's, like any job, there's difficulty, but what I do is very satisfying, very rewarding. You can make a decent living at it. You can provide for your family. I mean, there's so many benefits that I just think we don't really consider it as a viable option. So I would say to anyone, remember those folks in the Bible that were hesitant. Remember that God is going to be with you, and just understand that you can make a living at this. You can support your family, and um, you can do well at this profession, just like you can any other profession. But the biggest thing is you're doing it because you want to glorify God in a way that He has tasked you to do, and so don't turn your back on that. Um, that would be my advice.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about being a preacher that you would want to tell young people?
Oh, the biggest one is that, it's said jokingly, but almost seriously, and that is you only work one day a week. And if that were only true, right? Um, you
Right.
know, other misconceptions are that I don't blame folks because they don't know. So anytime somebody says something that you kind of roll your eyes at, I don't take too much offense at it because they just don't know. But the working one day a week, or um, the misconception that um, that it's somehow easy to come up with these sermons and these ideas, and it just rolls off the tongue, and you don't really have to do much to prepare for it. You just kind of throw it together and get up there. And um, as I know a lot of preachers that make it look easy, but even they, I know, spend countless hours developing lessons and getting ready to preach them. Other misconceptions, I think, is that preachers are always poor. They have a tough time making ends meet. That they're always under constant stress from the congregation because everybody's pulling at them from every direction. And that may be true. I think some preachers that could say that for sure, but I have not had that experience. In fact, when people when preachers talk about these, I call them tales from the crypt, all their horror stories, I just don't have any. I've been in a bubble, and I hope it stays that way. But I've been very fortunate, very blessed, that the three congregations that I've been with as a preacher and the one that I was with as a youth minister have taken such good care of me. And I think that if you just stay in your lane, put your head down, work hard, and love on people, they're going to take care of you.
Absolutely. That's some good advice. Libby, what role can preachers' wives and families play to encourage and support future ministers?
I think maybe, like he said, some of the misconceptions, maybe, debunking some of those misconceptions. Because I think when he started out preaching, I had the misconception, just because of the way it was in the congregation that I grew up in, is that the minister's wife was responsible for doing all of the ladies' days and was going to be the speaker at all of these events, which are roles that I feel very uncomfortable with. I would rather be behind the scenes. I would rather, do things to help set up or take food to people. I don't feel like I'm a great speaker. I want to do those things. But every congregation we have been at has allowed me to first be his wife and a Christian, without the expectations that that the minister's wife needs to be in charge of all these things. They've allowed me to fit in and find my place in the church just as any other member would. And so I think that would be one thing, at least to encourage ministers' wives, that, most congregations don't have those unrealistic expectations for the minister's wife, that they're hiring the minister. And obviously they want the minister's wife to be able to support him and to play a role as well. But the minister's wife is not fulfilling a paid position in the church. And that was one thing that was a misconception for me, that I really have been blessed by, to be able just to be myself everywhere that we've been.
That's good. That's real good. Yeah, because we all have different talents, and not every preacher wife fits that certain way. We're all different, just like you said. Being part of the member of the church, we are viewed as members of the church too, and that's wonderful that you've been able to just come in and find your spot, because it can be overwhelming when you do go to congregations that have these high expectations in the unwritten rule that you're the unpaid minister's wife that's supposed to be involved in everything, and it that can be overwhelming. But just having that communication ahead of time where you're going to go, and
Mhm.
to know that had time. But yeah, that's wonderful. So can y'all share a story of someone y'all have mentored or encouraged to go into ministry? And what was that like? What was that experience like?
Well, I don't throw around the word mentor. I don't know that I've ever mentored anybody, but I was fortunate at Oldham Lane. Um, we started a preacher training camp, and for about 13 years we did that. And there were many young men that came through there that have gone on to do ministry. I think of Dylan Bruce and Noah Davis, and there's certainly others that Mateo Vergara, who's still at Abilene. These guys have gone on and done ministry and have done it well. And like I said, there's others. I would hope that something that we said or did, and I say we, it wasn't me solo, that we were able to give them some tools, and of course the biggest mentor that these folks have had in common that I'm mentioning is their parents. They've all had good parents that have taught them well and were a part of good congregations that led them into that and supported that, because we can give them the tools at preacher training camp, but they would go back and their congregation would let them preach and let them do things. And that's huge when you're a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kid. And so I think that has been gratifying. We do something similar here at Walnut Street. I don't lead it, but I help with it, and called Lead Camp. And then we do a girls camp here as well called Shine. And, that still getting to do some of that. But the one thing I love about Walnut Street is they have always put an emphasis on interns. And so we'll have 3 interns. They even have a house for them that they bought across the street for them to live in through the summer. And so I get to work with these young men and prepare them for ministry as best I can. And that's kind of been my new role. And while we don't have a preacher training camp here, we have something a little different. I've kind of focused and channeled my efforts on these 3 young men in the summer.
Yeah, that makes a big deal, because you're planting that seed and giving them that encouragement and that motivation to do something that they might not have been able to try or do or have that ability. And I know some of my fond memories was when we, during the summer, having the youth interns come and you just be so involved and so active, and you could see the passion that they had doing it. And it just, Chris Webb was one of ours that
Yes.
came, and you can just, and now look at him now, and he, you just never know what kind of impact that will have and what it does for them.
Yeah.
So do y'all have any practices or traditions that have helped your family stay spiritual and stronger together? Any tips?
When the kids were all still at home, we did make an effort to have dinner together most nights of the week, and to share, share with each other about their days, and to find out what was going on with them. Um, Now, even though they're grown, we stay in contact with them. FaceTime is a wonderful thing when your kids don't live under your roof anymore, and to be able to stay in close contact and communication with them, and to encourage them when they're having a rough day, or just to share in the excitement when things are going great and they accomplish things. I think that's maybe just staying in communication with them, finding ways to stay close and in touch with them.
And that's a big deal. And knowing that y'all are still their biggest cheerleaders and cheer team, and helping encouraging them and motivating and loving on them, that's a big deal. And I know we still have little kids at home, and we do the dinner thing at night together, and asking them and encouraging them. And the times that we get super busy, maybe one night or something, and the kids are like, okay, aren't you going to ask me about my day? So those moments they will remember, that is for sure.
For sure.
All right, we're getting close to the end here. Okay, so looking back over the years, what's one thing you've learned that you wish you had known then that you know now in ministry?
Something I wish I knew then that I know now. That the most important thing is to be genuine. I was trying to be like somebody else because I'd never done the job before. So I didn't know. I mean, I was trying to be like the people I looked up to. And the day that I realized I can just be me, just be genuine, I started noticing that people responded best for my preaching when I was personal and I put the personal touch on it. And I talked about things that I was dealing with and things that were happening in my life. And, instead of being academic or, getting into character, if you will,
Hmm.
I didn't want to be a caricature. Um, when I learned how to just be me, everything changed. And I started to really get comfortable in my own skin and in preaching. That's one thing I wish I had started earlier is not trying to be like somebody else and not trying to stand up there like a stuffed shirt and disseminate information, but rather, I said it before. I feel like I was early on just giving a book report every week. Here's what I've studied. So now we're going to talk about it. And, preaching should be transformational, or at least it should incite transformation. And so once I realized that I could be myself, that was a huge deal.
Yeah. Libby, do you have something to add to that?
And I think I would say that, but very, very much along those same lines is that you don't have to try to be perfect um, because you're the minister's wife. People have. I don't think people have unrealistic expectations, and again, that I probably could have been myself more often and been transparent and been vulnerable more often. Knowing that I still would have been accepted without, having to put on a front of being all put together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something that we have to remind ourselves daily. I feel like, just to be who God's called you to be. And that, like go back, we all have our own talents and we all have our own strengths and our own weaknesses. And to know we don't fit just a certain mold and that we can be transparent, and that being transparent and being realistic, and not only to others, but to ourselves too, for other women and other men to be able to grow closer together. And then you become more believable too, because you're not up there saying one thing and then getting off the stage and portraying something completely different. So absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So if you could give one message to all the preachers' wives and ministry families listening, what would it be?
Be able to see the best in everyone. Um, at times, you might be exposed to things as a preacher's wife that um, might be surprising or disappointing, but always giving people the benefit of the doubt, and always being willing to love people and to um, help them grow and to form relationships with everyone. That can be a challenge at times, um, but just go in with an open heart and open mind. um, I think is what I would say.
And that's what makes you so amazing, Miss Libby, because that right there, that's that's a big deal. Is to be able to love people where they are, meet them where they are through whatever, and to give them that, like you said, that benefit of the doubt. And something that I'm working on with my kids right now is like when hurt people, So like if they're going through something, especially when ministry, you are going to get more of the negatives probably than the positives that come up to you, and more of the hurt and the negative that come up to you more so than the positives. And being able to love people where they are and encourage them to be in a better place and to not be judgmental and all those things, that's a big deal. That's so much easier said than done. And so that's a real good one, Miss Libby. I love that one. That is really good. I really appreciate y'all taking time to come and be on this podcast and helping us get to know y'all a little bit better, and some encouraging words that y'all had and some good thoughts. And sharing some of your stories. And I really appreciate y'all. And that's one of the good reasons why y'all are at Walnut Street in Dixon and making such a big difference. And I've heard nothing but positives about the two of you. And we're looking forward to seeing y'all in a couple weeks. And really appreciate y'all. Thank y'all. Keep being you guys and y'all and being transparent and working for the Lord.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Practice.
Really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime. All right, ladies. So I hope this podcast has given you some hope, has encouraged you, and hope you're able to reflect on your walk with God.